Welcome to the 100-Yard Dash Football Podcast presented by the Chiefs Focus Network, where you talks about the NFL from end zone to end zone and all 100 yards in between. Without further ado, here's you.
Yo, what it do? This is the 100-Yard Dash Football Podcast, where I'm talking about the NFL from end zone to end zone and all 100 yards in between. And my name, who am I? I'm you.
Detective, you? Not you, you.
Who? Who?
Do
you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Don't nobody understand the words that are coming out of your mouth, man.
And I am your host. That's the letter, not the word. I'm your host. What's happening? This is a new situation. You can find this podcast wherever you find your podcasts. This season, of course, Chiefs Focus is doing something new. We put all the podcasts under one umbrella. So if you subscribe to Chiefs Focus, you will find the 100-Yard Dash in that space. I do it at least once a week. Normally Wednesdays. Sometimes I do it earlier. This time I'm doing it later. Set up your notifications. You'll know when I'm on. You can also interact with the Twitch stream, or you can hit up the Chiefs Focus YouTube page. Like and subscribe, so forth, so on, and what have you. And I thank you for listening. Let's talk about it. First, I must start off, and I'm recording this later in the week than I planned, mainly because I don't have words to say about the situation that happened Wednesday. It sucks that we have to deal with that, and I know those are the words that I have. It just sucks, and I have no answers. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, the Chiefs parade, there was a shooting, and there was a shooting, and multiple people were injured. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. One was murdered, and yeah, it's you know it can happen. You know it can happen, but it's hard to believe it can happen. I know everybody thinks it can't happen to them, or that they're not susceptible to that situation. But this happened here in the city, in my city. And I'm always, as I've gotten older, as I've grown my life, as I've gotten married and had kids and have kids, I'm a little bit more aware of that life happens, and life comes with accidents, and I'm not talking about nothing like this. I'm talking about falling, hurting yourself, and so forth and so on. But this should not happen. This shouldn't be a thing. We shouldn't have to worry about active shooter drills, but we live in a fallen world, and those are situations that we have to deal with, and it honestly isn't a good thing. And I'm not saying anything that no one else has said. I'm not saying anything that no one else has said. And that's one of the reasons I have neglected, that's the word I'm going to use, to record this episode until now. I mean, this happened on Wednesday. It's 2 days later. I originally was planning on recording like right after the parade, but yeah, that happened. And I was planning on taking my family. I was able to attend the 2019 parade, and it was a good time. But this time we had warm weather. It was really nice outside, and this is number 3 in 6 years. That's amazing. So I was ready to take. I was planning on it. My wife was like, "Oh yeah, we could drop the little ones off at my mother-in-law's and all that kind of stuff." And I honestly, when I woke up that day, something told me not to go. And I don't know, maybe it was just me being tired from the night before, working and everything, or being tired from just celebrating the Super Bowl or whatever. But for whatever reason, I didn't go. And I hope everyone in their family is safe and okay. I know it's a couple of days later, but the aftermath is wide reaching. This is not something that's just going to go away tomorrow, the next day. For people that were in attendance and were scared for their lives, this could last them the rest of their lives. Like this is not something normal to go to a parade or go to a function and hear shots ringing and be worried about your children, your family members, your wife, your girlfriend, your best friend. You come there to party and have a good time, and then this happens. So it's just tough for me to deal with. And so I'm grateful that those that were injured, the victims were injured, they were announced to be able to make a full recovery. And for the family of the young lady that lost her life, my heart, my prayers, my thoughts are going out to you. And it really, really, really stinks. And I'm putting it in the best ways I can because I really don't have the words. But and ain't nothing I'm going to say is going to be as comforting as I would like it to be to anyone. But my thoughts, my heart, my prayers go out to the young lady who suffered the fatality, her family and her friends. It's one of those days that will never go away, and it really, really, really stinks. And I don't have the words. I don't even feel right recording this, if we're going to be honest. Because it just doesn't feel right. But it's hard to say that we move on, but we will get stronger from this, and hopefully situations get better. So there's no real way to segue from that, but I unfortunately, yeah, for my own sanity, honestly, I'm going to move on. Oh man. So the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. That is a statement. That is a quote. I remember I watched The Incredibles, and Edna Mode, the lady that made Mr. Incredible's Incredisuit, she said the words, "Luck favors the prepared." And that is what I thought about this game. That is quite literally what I thought about this game. Luck favors the prepared. I don't believe in luck. I'm not one of those guys that believe in luck. But there are some statements about preparation that I looked up. By failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. I hate when people say that in the situations that they say it in, but it's still true. It's still true. Abraham Lincoln said, "I will prepare, and someday my chance will come." Look, whether you prepare or not, chances will be there. The opportunity will be there. It's whether you grasp it. That's what carpe diem means. Seize the opportunity. Carpe diem is a big one. And what I realized is that the moment can come for you, and the moment is too big for you. But if you keep preparing, it will come. And even if you've lost it in the past, that opportunity can't come around again. You just can't let it catch you slipping. And the opportunity caught the 49ers slipping. I don't have a bunch of like prepared notes, but I do have some bullet points. First of all, the news. The news. Steve Wilkes gets fired. Look, Steve Wilkes was the defensive coordinator for 1 year. Yeah, 1 year. For the 49ers. And Steve Wilkes is my dude. Steve Wilkes has been my guy for a little while now. I think he got a raw hand. I think he is currently getting a raw hand in the NFL. He was the interim coach for the Carolina Panthers. I said interim coach. He was the head coach for the Carolina Panthers, only was able to serve 1 year before he got fired for Cliff Kingsbury. Then he moved on as the defensive coordinator for the Panthers, who fired, was it Matt Rule? No, it wasn't Matt Rule, who fired Frank Reich. And he was the defensive coordinator for Frank Reich. Frank Reich got fired, and he ended up being the interim head coach, and they did not retain him. And then he leaves. I think I got the timeline right. He leaves the NFL, goes to Mizzou. You see him move there. And then I actually wish he would have stayed with Mizzou because I'm a Mizzou fan, M-I-Z. And then he gets this job with Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers. And I thought this was a good gig for him. But, yeah, apparently, all crap rolls downhill. That's one thing we do know. All crap rolls downhill. And while this game was not his fault, actually, it probably is far from his fault. Somebody's got to be scapegoated. And Steve Wilkes was scapegoated. So let's get into the game. Like I said, I don't have a lot prepared. I'm just going off the cuff here. As we look at how it went, it was annoying to me to see the Chiefs play the way they were playing at first, mainly because it felt like they were warming up to the game. The first half, they were warming up to the game. But in hindsight, I realized that it seemed like it's sort of a feeling out. They were understanding where the 49ers were coming from, figuring it out, as it were, and then adjusting, which is cool, So the 49ers, I feel like, were directing the Chiefs in certain directions at the beginning of the game. They dictated the game a lot. There were some instances where, there was pushback, but I feel like the 49ers dictated a lot of that game. To be honest, I just think that they dictated the game and made the Chiefs do things that they didn't really want to do, right? And Purdy did fine. Purdy held his own. The offense did fine. But there wasn't a game changer. It just wasn't a game changer on the 49ers. Again, the defense was dictating where the Chiefs went and what the Chiefs did. The issue was the offense, I didn't feel, capitalized on it. Yeah, they scored 10 points. Who felt comfortable scoring 10 points against Patrick Mahomes? I don't know how you feel comfortable with that. Having a 10-point lead at half or whatever it was. Like, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But, it was sitting there. I was like, 10 points, that's nothing. Okay, we'll get it. And I was a little disoriented at first because I wasn't thinking about the gamesmanship of the game. I wasn't thinking about that part, the strategies, because that's the thing. You got to come in with strategies. Like I said, the future belongs to those who prepare. You got to have a plan. And I think Shanahan had an original plan, but then here comes the second half. The second half is where like everything started cooking. And that's the thing about the Chiefs. One thing I do love about the Chiefs is the fact that you have to play all 4 quarters. You have to. Yeah, they might mess up. They might mess up at some point. But at the end of the day, if you don't play all 4 quarters, you probably aren't winning that game. You just aren't. And while I absolutely could not stand that 2021 football game against the Tampa Bay Bucks. While I hated that game, it's something Patrick Mahomes needed. It's something Patrick Mahomes needed. And I say Patrick Mahomes because some of that team is not still on this team. Patrick Mahomes needed to learn what losing at the highest level felt like. Not only losing at the highest level, but getting blown out of the water, not scoring a touchdown. He had to feel that. Otherwise, this day probably wouldn't have come. And again, sorry if my thoughts are scatterbrained a little bit. I'm going off the cuff. So the Chiefs, I felt like were just inhaling, taking in information. Specifically, Patrick Mahomes was just taking in the information that was given to him. Steve Wilks was blitzing a lot, which is just something, but he was able to get an the defense of the 49ers were able to get an interception off of Patrick Mahomes. They were also able to could get a few sacks. Like, this wasn't the offensive line from last year, which I'm sure Orlando Brown is kind of laughing at the fact that, that was the situation, but that's neither here nor there. But what I realized was Patrick Mahomes was just taking in information, realizing that this is something I could do. This is something I could do. And there was that's one of the things I've always wanted the Chiefs to do is the hurry up offense, which they don't really ever do. Like, I feel like sometimes I saw all the replays on TikTok of people watching the game as they were, as the time was expiring in regulation. And I was just like, man, what are y'all doing? We could win this game. I actually think we can win this game. But this is what happens when Andy Reid trusts the defense. When Andy Reid trusts the team, which is something I can't say that has ever happened under any other defensive coordinator in Kansas City. And the only other defensive coordinator has been is Bob Sutton. And so Andy Reid trusting the defense to be able to hold them off, even though they were up at one point. Even though they were getting production at the offense, the 49ers offense was getting production at one time. Even though one of their receivers was cooking us, in the second half, you started to see a little pushback, not only from the defense of the Chiefs, but you also saw a little pushback from the play calling. The defense was able to dictate who wasn't getting the ball. Deebo Samuel didn't get that many touches. They got tired of running the ball with Christian McCaffrey. Look, there was a lot of things that could have been working, could have continued to work. But, the Chiefs held their ground. The offense was never, ever flustered. Like, I don't feel like there was ever a moment of doubt, it didn't feel like there was ever a moment where they were backed into a corner. Never felt that way. Chiefs fans might have felt that way, but there was never a moment where there was like any trepidation of any sort for the Chiefs offense. Then we get into, they go in there, Butker, he kicks the field goal, and we're tied. We go into overtime. They let it fall into overtime. I'm like, oh no. But then I remember, I told my wife, I was remember why they want to go into overtime. This is the last game of the season. Let's not forget. And I told my wife all this stuff. I'm like, look, remember in Baltimore when we had the 13-second game? This is the last game of the season. They're not going to do a sudden death situation, or they're not going to do a first one to score wins. They're going to go toe to toe. Both teams get the ball because of the 13-second rule that the Buffalo Bills decided they wish they had the ball, and they were able to petition the competition committee to change the rule for the playoffs. Now, personally, at the time, I thought it was during the regular season, but I think there was an overtime game, and I looked up the rules and I realized that was for the playoffs. So in the playoffs, it goes for, I want to say 2 quarters. Actually, you know what? Don't quote me on that. I'm just going to say, I know that at some point, they're going to let you play. They're going to play all the way down to regulations, not first score wins. And then there's a sudden death situation after that because they're not going to let you play for like 4 quarters. This isn't the NBA. This is the NFL. They're grown 200 to 300-pound men running into each other. There's only so much you could do for that. But I knew that was a situation. Most people in Kansas City knew that was a situation. And C-Dot, Carrington Harrison of 610 mentioned something that I think is important to mention. He mentioned sometime this week that he doesn't think that football players pay attention to the game as much as the average or the fans. When I talk about it, I'm talking about the rules. And hearing the post game of the 49ers, hearing the post game of even Kyle Shanahan makes me think the same, makes me agree with him because he had the original thought. I just was like, wild that's the case. And then I thought about it. How many of y'all know the rules of your job? Y'all know some of the things you can't do, but do you know all of them? Like I'm part of a union. I read that union book probably once. I didn't read that union book once, and I refer to it if there's something I feel that I need to look at. But I've read that union book once. We've had 2 different contracts since then, so I've only read it once. So I'm guilty of the same thing. I'm guilty. I can admit it. I'm guilty of not knowing the rules of my company. What I can do, what I can't do. I just show up to work, I go home. Period. That's how I operate. But if I feel there's something fishy going on, then I'll refer to my union handbook. Look, Kyle Shanahan said that he wanted to get the ball third. Excuse me, what? Because it just that didn't make any sense to me. And hearing Chiefs players say, "Oh, we all knew we were going to get the ball first, and we were going to whatever, or we were going to get the ball second, and if they kicked the extra point, we would go for 2 at the end." I don't necessarily fault Kyle Shanahan for what he chose to do. I do not. However, I do fault him for not preparing his team to know the rules, basically, that we're not doing a sudden death here. Both teams get the ball. And here's why I say that. Because they go out there, they think they've kicked the field goal, and in your mind, that's why they say the mind is a terrible thing to waste. You can sit here and mentally process things, and your body reacts to what you mentally processed. And if what you processed was incorrect information, your body now has to re-regulate itself to go back to what it was before. What do I mean by that? If you thought you won this game, there's a relaxation that comes over your body. There is a feeling of relief that comes over you, right? And it's difficult to raise your level of competition back to what it was before you felt that way. Get yourself back in the game. And no matter if you can or can't, some people can, some people can't. And you would like to think that football players know how to do that at the drop of a hat, but it's not the case for everybody. Everybody's different. Even football players, they're built up of the same stuff, but they're different. And it's so raising your level of competition back up to when you thought you had won the game on that field goal. And in normal cases, you would have won the game at that field goal. But now you're playing until the end of the quarter. And Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, Travis Kelce, freaking McCole Hardman, all these dudes showed up. And they made sure that they milked that clock as far down as they could get it. And here comes much maligned McCole Hardman, who I've been having my issues with all season, or most of half of the season. But he showed up in the game where the moment where it needed it the most. And look. As the show is called, Luck Favors the Prepared. Andy Reid was prepared. Andy Reid prepared his team. Look, I am a fan of Kyle Shanahan. I always have been. Even with the 28-3 thing. In fact, if Andy Reid retires in the next 3 to 4 years, I used to want Kyle Shanahan until this situation. Kyle Shanahan, and I don't have notes. So I'm just, I'm moving. So please move with me. It's not as it's not as sectioned off as I normally am, but just roll with me. Kyle Shanahan was like my second favorite coach and in the league. And honestly, I just see a lot of Andy Reid in him. I just do. There's a lot of Andy Reid in Kyle Shanahan. What do I mean by that? Think about, I followed Andy Reid a lot when he was with the Eagles. I mean, before T.O. came along, I followed him a lot. And when he got fired, I wanted the Chiefs to go get him. I was very proud of Clark Hunt for making sure he got him. It changed the fate of the Chiefs ever, really. Andy Reid was a control freak in Philadelphia. Andy Reid was a control freak in Philadelphia. He might not have had cameras in each meeting room and had the eye in the sky, as it were. But he was a control freak. Being a first-year coach, being a head coach, and calling plays, not having offensive, like all that kind of stuff. Like, you just a control freak type of situation. And I'm not saying the control freak is bad, but things sometimes that's not what you need. And as time keeps progressing, we hear that Kyle Shanahan can be somewhat of a control freak. He has and control. He needs some level of control. And I feel the same way. I feel he's now currently the same way Andy Reid was in Philadelphia. And that was 20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago, and started in 1999. And so you see all that and you realize that can be a lot on your plate. Andy Reid, when he was with the Eagles, had a lot on his plate, and he would lose the little things. He would forget about the little things, clock management, so forth and so on. The big one was clock management. That was one of the things he never was good at with the Eagles, ever. Okay. So you see that, and you look over at Kyle. While he's not horrible at clock management, you saw issues with clock management. Talking about it, we wanted it third. Bro, come on now. Come on. Like, Andy was playing to win the game. So, with that being said, I do think Kyle Shanahan will learn from this. Hope he learns from this and is able to adjust himself, because that's one of the things I do realize about Andy Reid. He changed. Granted, the change didn't happen until he got fired from Philadelphia. And that was after what, 10 years? 2009? Nope. He got to Kansas City in 2013. So it's a little bit longer. 1999 to 2012. So 13 years. And Andy was in control of player personnel. He's in control of a lot. And also drawing up plays and all that kind of stuff. At some point, it's just too much for you to deal with. It just is. You got other coaches. Trust them. And I think Kyle Shanahan is the same thing, because he's currently the offensive coordinator. He is currently the head coach. And I think there's a little bit of a lot going on over there. And so Kyle needs to find some guys who he trusts. And the firing of Steve Wilks tells me he didn't fully trust Steve Wilks. That wasn't his guy. He just hired him. I don't know why he hired him if you were going to just make him the scapegoat. But Kyle Shanahan got to figure some things out. He's got to grow from this. He's got to realize that it's not having all the control ain't it, especially on a football team. With that being said, I see a lot of Andy Reid in him, and taking on so much of everything makes you miss out on the details. And I'm the same way. I'm not hating on him, because I'm typically the same way. I don't even want to worry about the details. Give me the big stuff. I will give the details to somebody else. If you make me do details, something gonna fall through the cracks. That's why I don't plan vacations. That's why I don't I don't like doing it. Now, you want me to get somewhere on time? If you tell me, give me a list of things to do, I get them done. But I'm not a detail-oriented person on most things. But in life, I'm not that detail-oriented. Try to make sure I'm concise, and I try to make sure that the details are taken care of. But, sometimes a lot of things fall through the cracks. And so, I have to rely on the help of my family. When I say my family, I mean my wife, to help me out. And sometimes I don't want to put that on her, but if I don't, things ain't going to get done. Certain things aren't going to get done. So I have to think about that. And to be an effective leader, being an effective leader has a lot to do with delegation. I'm not saying that he needs an offensive coordinator, because if he doesn't want one, he's not going to have one. But he needs to figure out how to make sure that things like this don't happen anymore. I know the 49ers faithful, bang, bang, gang, gang, whatever y'all say. I know the 49ers faithful are like very annoyed. I definitely can understand that, because I was where you were in 2017. No, I'm sorry. Make that 2018. Patrick Mahomes, 54 touchdown season. I was the same way. I was like, look, we're at the AFC Championship game. We lose to Tom Brady. D Ford offsides. Yeah. I felt like you could not get back from things like that. We had only seen the Patriots go back to back, or the Patriots have basically dominated the playoff landscape. And then we lose to the Patriots. And you look at in between the Patriots, you don't see many people going back to back, or even going to 2 of 3 Super Bowls, or 5 or 3 of 5, or anything like that. So it was like the Saints won one year, the Seahawks won another year, the Eagles won one. Like, you see different teams winning, so you don't see back to backs. I knew Patrick Mahomes was great, but one thing you got to realize, you don't expect, you think dynasty, but sometimes it wavers a little bit, and you hope your team's a dynasty, but it remains to be seen. I knew the Chiefs could win a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes. That was one of the things I always knew. When he was drafted out of Texas Tech, when they traded up to get Patrick Mahomes, I knew it. But once we lost that 18 game, I know how difficult it is to get past the first round. But Patrick Mahomes is freaking special. And we all know that. Like, all of us. He is, as much as Tom Brady is the GOAT, whatever. Yes, I will agree with you. But you got to realize, and they're going to do this, the Chiefs will put a lot into trying to figure out how to be. They're legit dynasty now, but going back to back to back, it's going to be immensely difficult. They already are a dynasty. They're the team of the 2020s. The Cowboys were the team of the 90s, Patriots of the next decade, Patriots even of the next decade after that. The Chiefs are now the team of this decade, and the decade just started. Okay, it's done. It's done. I'm interested to see how they follow up this season, because this season was maligned with not having receivers, because we didn't have a bunch of receivers, bunch of receiver drops, pop-ups that caused interceptions. It was a lot. Andy Reid hasn't had a whole lot of success with rookie wide receivers, but it worked this time. And Chase, and you're not going to sit here and tell me that they're not going to go after this 3-peat. You're going to go after the 3-peat. First of all, if your goal isn't the Super Bowl, isn't to win a Super Bowl, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Period. But going for a 3-peat has never been done in Super Bowl history. As far as I know, it hasn't been done in Super Bowl history. And that could put Patrick Mahomes in an rarefied air. That's something that Tom Brady has never done. And as far as I know, Patrick Mahomes is 27, 28? 12 years, let's say, in 12, if he is 28, in 12 years he'll be 40. And I'm not expecting him to be Tom Brady and play till he's 46 or whatever age Tom Brady is. I'm not expecting him to do that. But being able to play, let's say, till 40 and give himself a chance every so often to win another Super Bowl, having the fact that you've got three already, and you did it on a rookie deal, and you've done it when you got your money, and you're restructuring now to revamp this team. You've already got 3. If you can get this 4th one the next year, that will make you a back-to-back-to-back champion, which again has never been done. But it also gives you 4. It gives you 4 rings. Tom Brady has 6. And that makes this goal of beating Tom Brady a little bit more attainable, honestly. And granted, the Patrick Mahomes effect, what I call a product of a Patrick Mahomes effect, will be in effect this offseason. Let's be real. Our own division spent $250 million plus in an effort to stop Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes had his struggles. But most of the time with this team, Patrick Mahomes and this squad, their best years come when they have the most adversity. So it felt like in 2020, 2021, that COVID year, that they just walked through the league. It was just cakewalk. They had 2 losses, 3, I think, but the third one, that last one was starter sitting. But man, that team was just going through the motions. And then we lost to Tom Brady. But look, I'm amped for what's to come. I expect there to be some big time moves to be made, especially with Patrick Mahomes restructuring his deal. I don't know who's all staying, who's all going. If this show continues, we'll talk about that. But I'm interested to see how they go about the chance for a 3-peat. Again, I apologize to you about the rambling. I had some bullet points, but I didn't have like legit full thought out situation. And you can tell this is not the way I normally do this show, but I appreciate everybody for listening. Again, like, subscribe to the show, and I thank you for that. Check out the Chiefs Focus interviews and check out the Chiefs Focus articles. And also, I have gone on with my cohort Philip Magruder. So we are part of the PMAX War Room. So check that out. It's normally out on Mondays or Tuesdays. And that is basically us talking about off-season strategies and draft concepts. So please check that out. Check out Chiefs Focus First and 10. And I think there is another podcast coming in development. So keep a lookout for Chiefs Focus and what they're planning on doing in the year 2024. Again, thank you for listening. And I think that's all I got. Deuces.